It's hard to predict what will happen in the event of a Trump victory. At the moment, there's clearly, a fairly limited number of ways by which he can win. Much of his fortune depends on what happens in 3 states in the upper Midwest region of the country: Wisconsin, Michigan, and probably most especially Pennsylvania. Many people are concerned about civil disorder, especially in large cities. In many cities, New York, where I'm from, many businesses have boarded up shops and things like that. So they're concerned that you'd have to say left-wing activists and others would in some ways set off some riots, but it may not work out that way, because it may be a week or more time before we have a result, and that will allow temperatures to cool and these results to sink in. Probably on the Trump side, a lot of litigation over how the election is finally conducted. So there's a long way to go in between where we are today and a final definitive result declaring Biden the winner. A Biden victory is going to mean that half of the country is going to feel let down, meaning all of the Trump supporters are going to feel let down and frustrated. And clearly there's very intense support for President Trump. So far as Trump support tends to be in more rural parts of the countries and not concentrated as the Democrat support is in large cities, it's not clear, in terms of protests or street action, what form some sort of public expression of disappointment and so on the part of Trump support would take. Presuming that a Biden victory starts after all the legal questions and potential legal challenges, which have in some ways already begun, are settled, one could imagine a division between, let's say, the Republican Party, broadly understood, and President Trump, with President Trump continuing to contest the victory and using his media megaphone to argue that it was illegitimate or stolen, where the rest of the Republican Party basically accepting Biden's victory. I think were Biden to lose, this would clearly advantage going forward a further movement of the Democratic Party to the left. The Democratic Party's been moving very quickly to the left of the political spectrum, at least on domestic policy, in terms of various proposals, which in some would vastly increase the size of the American welfare state. Before, the United States was often criticized in Europe as being undemocratic because it had low voter turnout in comparison. Now we have high voter turnout and it's said to be a threat to democracy. Clearly, many people, if Biden wins, will say, well, democracy worked and this shows the vigor and health of the system. And if Trump wins, they'll say, democracy is not working and it shows that the United States is doing poorly. Clearly, that interpretation has a strong partisan view. In the teeth of a pandemic and a large economic recession, enormous and unprecedented challenges, there's been a very vibrant Democratic campaign in some ways, and the massive electoral turnout, meaning the number of people voting, would indicate, at least in one interpretation, a sign of political health.